Hey, how's it going? Brian Cain with Erin Young Garrett here with the team Allie, Beth, Allman Real Estate Mental Performance Podcast, and super excited to kickstart a 6-part series where Erin and I, and maybe Keith, if he decides to show up when you're watching this, Keith, is break down the book, The Power of Moments by Chip and Dan Heath. Now, this was a book that Erin was raving about and recommended, and it's maybe the third or fourth person who recommended this. I think maybe the first guy that recommended it, Mike Neighbors, the women's basketball coach at the University of Arkansas, who was a national championship women's basketball coach at the University of Washington before coming to Arkansas. He recommended it, you recommended it, and I bought it. And now we're going through it. So in this episode, we're going to break down, if you want to follow along as a listener, we're going to break down chapters 1 and 2. And then on our next episode, we're going to break down 3 and 4. And we're going to kind of go through it over a 5-part series where we break down those chapters. So Erin, as we talk about the power of moments, chapter 1 is defining moments and chapter 2 is thinking in moments. What were some of the big takeaways, I think, that stuck out to you that you feel like might be able to be utilized in real estate by our agents that are going to be listening to this podcast?
Well, in that first part where he talks about the components of what is a memorable moment, and he breaks it down into the word epic, elevation, pride, insight, and connection. And it's, it really is about creating those scenarios. And for real estate, when you're with a client, it does become a bit routine of, going in a car, get out, go in the house, go look around, come back out, get back in your car and drive to the next one. And, a lot of times the client start blending houses with each other, and they can't differentiate what they saw at the end of the day. So, we have all these limitations on, try not to show more than 6 houses at a time or stuff like that. But so that in particular, in that first chapter of defining moments and, what creates a moment, and that's what I started applying and looking at with real estate was when you're doing these things, how are you making each house memorable so that they don't blend it together at the end of the day?
Yeah, I love that. I love that acronym EPIC, right? And I think as we go through this book series together, obviously we're only 4 chapters in. We're going to, or today we're doing chapters 1 and 2, and next week we'll do chapters 3 and 4. And as we break this down, the book is going to talk about how do you create defining moments for yourself, for your customers, for your clients as a real estate agent. And the acronym that you mentioned, EPIC, I think is the first piece for people to realize that defining moments have, and this is Erin where I'm gonna need your help, is it all 4 of these or one of these that's elevation, where it breaks the norm of every day, right? And we think about elevation, something that breaks the norm as like a time where you take out your camera and take a picture. Maybe you're walking through a house looking at it and you see a fireplace and a mantle and you're like, whoa, that's awesome. I might not buy this house because it doesn't have the number of bedrooms I want, but I want that mantle and that fireplace if I'm building something. Boom, they take a picture, right? So like there's like that elevation, or maybe it's the yard, or it's the outdoor barbecue, or it's the home gym or the home office, whatever the person is that they're looking for. So the elevation is something that's different than the everyday moment. The insight is something that you get from like learning about yourself or learning about an understanding of something in the world. Pride is a moment that captures us at our best. And then the connection is something that brings us together, social, something like a wedding, a graduation, a baptism, something like that. So typically those moments that stick out to us the most in our life have components of EPIC: elevation, pride, insight, or connection. Do you know, Erin, do they need all 4? Is it just one of them?
For defining moments, it's all 4. Now, as you and I know, as you break down the book, there's components to each, and it's parts of the components for each of them. But for defining moments, it's my understanding that you need all 4.
Yeah, it's interesting. So if we look at page 14, I started this here. On page 14, it says defining moments often spark positive emotion. And anytime I've bought a house, when I walk into the house, I know immediately I'm going to buy this house. Like I don't have to be there typically for more than 15 minutes. Like I walk in and go, yep, this is what I want. And there's an emotional pull because I think I see myself in the house having the life that I want to have at that moment, right? And then the last paragraph there, actually on page 14, I'm glad we're talking about this. The last paragraph there on page 14, it says defining moments possess at least one of the four elements, but
Oh,
they need not have all four. So I thought they needed all four.
okay. I thought they need all four too.
Yeah, but it looks like they need the one. So, the one might be you walk into the house and you see yourself with the connection, the place where you can have your family around the Thanksgiving table or the tree or the outside barbecue area if you're going to connect and have people.
And Brian, it's usually something like that. Like you can see the holiday gathering, the Thanksgiving Day table, with the room for the dining room table. It's that, just what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think, and if you look at like pride, right? I know when I've looked at houses and I've started looking again, is like that moment of capturing us at our best. Like for me, I want to walk into a house that has an office where I'm like, yeah, I want Major League Baseball players coming in here and going, damn, this is legit. Like I want to have that moment of pride that when people come to the house for coaching, that they come in there and they go, wow, this is elite. Like I must be working with the best. So I think when you look at those moments, whether it's the piece around connection with family or friends, or it's a pride of if it's a workplace, or even if it's like insight of maybe people walk in and they go, wow, I could do this here. So they see the insight into what it is that they could do in that house, right? Of an understanding of what I might be able to do, or maybe what's capable of. And I think they get excited about that. So I think when you're selling real estate, how can you intentionally focus on epic? How does it go ahead?
Well, as you speak, that makes me wonder. I want to go back and look and think, like, do people, when a house is decorated for the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, or or Halloween, or the different holidays, do people, because it does create an emotion when you see great Halloween decorations, which is very popular here in Dallas. People start thinking like, oh, I can have a great Halloween party here. Or if you've got a pool and set up sort of what would look like a great pool party. I'm wondering, if that does, I need to look at the statistics to see how much that affects, people's buying power.
Well, then so there's that element to it. And then there's also the element, if you go to page 16, right, there's the element, and I'm going through the hardcover book, so I think yours may be the same, but it's page 16. It's the last page of chapter 1. And it lists elevation, insight, pride, and connection. And I wrote down next to it, like, how can I, as a real estate agent, assure that all four of these are happening? So the elevation, like, it says there's something that you kind of like take that reminds you. So maybe that you as an agent, you get a photocopy of the first of the contract page, or you get a photograph, like when people are moving, you find out when they're moving in, and then you hire a professional photographer to go and like take pictures of the house, and you give them a book of something of them moving in, right? Mm-hmm. Or there's like the recognition, the pride, like maybe you show up and the people show up to move in, and you as the agent are there with a bottle of champagne, and there's a red ribbon on the front door that the people come up and cut, and maybe that's the picture that they get, right? Just creating something around making it like a memorable moment, because they talk about in here the peak and the end, right? And they say psychologists, this is on page 8, it says the people remember the best or the worst moment, known as the peak, and the ending. It says psychologists call it the peak end rule. And I know often when I've been shown property by real estate agents, they always take me to the best house last, right? Which is probably part of the end rule of the day,
right?
The peak end with together. But how is the agent, like, how do you put the bow on the entire transaction and process so that when it's done, the client can look back and say, I could not imagine buying real estate or selling real estate with anyone other than that person because of how smooth they made the transaction, when in reality, there might have just been a peak and there might have been a great ending that they did.
That's so true. And I don't remember what page it was, but they talked about making the ordinary extraordinary. And, as I sit here and talk to you, what a great moment if you did it's very inexpensive to go have a big red bow made and put it on the front door. But what difference they'll always talk about it, and remember that.
Yeah. And it says here, all it takes to make the ordinary extraordinary is a bit of insight and forethought.
Hmm.
And if you think about as a real estate agent, like one of my mentor, Ken Revisa, said to me, he said, Brian, you want to know how you did a good job as a coach? I said, how's that, coach? How do I know, Ken? He goes, did they ask you back? Did they book another session? That's how you know. And I think as a real estate agent, you can look at your portfolio and go, how many repeat customers do I have?
Hmm.
If you don't have a lot of repeat customers, you can benefit a lot by creating more defining moments for the customers that you do have, because I think that's what's going to turn them into repeat customers. What
Absolutely.
do you think about that?
I completely agree. That's really, the secret to the business is repeat customers and referrals.
Mm,
It cuts down on so much of the work
mm.
if that's what you're doing.
Yeah, I didn't even think about the referral piece, but yeah, I mean, if you're creating those moments for people, think about the referrals that come. Like, think about if you did the red ribbon ceremony, and then you got that picture, like cool frame, put it somewhere, and I hung it up in my house.
Yeah.
Or maybe you said instead of the red ribbon cutting, because I think about my wife and she might go, well, I don't want to picture me in my sweats moving in. Maybe it'd be like, okay, well, how about after a week after you get in the house, or a month after you get in the house, I'm going to contact you as a real estate agent and say, hey, I want to send over a professional photographer to take your first family photo somewhere at your favorite place in the house. The professional photographer comes in, takes the picture, then the agent gives you the framed picture, and you put it up in your house. Well, then
Hmm.
all of your friends and family who come into that house, which would be moving into that area where that real estate agent works, right, would potentially go, oh, wow, that's a great photo. Who did that? And then they tell the story, and then they give you the contact information of the agent. It's like the best marketing you can get.
It's fantastic.
This is getting me excited. Let's talk about chapter 2, thinking in moments. And I love that they talked about like your first day on the job. And if you remember what your first day on the job was, most people, they're given a 3-ring binder that says, here's our corporate policies, here's our sexual harassment policy, here's your desk, thank you, welcome, and you're supposed to figure out what you're doing, right? And then they talked about like what John Deere decided that they were going to do as a first day. And the first day on the job was like a celebration. Like they put up a banner at your cubicle and everyone would come over and introduce themselves. And like the CEO would take you to lunch. And it was like you didn't really do any work on your first day other than just get comfortable and get to meet people and realize, wow, this is a really cool place to work that values me. And I think for our agents and our teams that we have with Team Allie, Beth, and for anybody listening to this, what is your onboarding process for your new team members on your first day? And do you celebrate that? And then do you celebrate their 100th day and their first year and their 100th client that they bring in? Like, what are you doing to make those defining moments intentionally sprinkled throughout their day? What are some suggestions you have, Erin, for the real estate agent teams we have within Allie, Beth, to maybe make that first day or like the milestones of someone's career even that much more defining?
And residential real estate, or in real estate, it's such an individual business that, not everybody comes into the office and things like that. But it's so true. If you can create a memory for the milestones, we, over the past year, I for people for their first deal, I've tried to, get them out to lunch or dinner or happy hour or something. For their anniversary, we try and do something to celebrate. But I mean, after hearing what, John Deere does, it's, wouldn't you want to go into work every day when your very first day they, had a party for you?
Yeah. Yeah. And then the people who are retiring are like, hey, can I quit and rejoin so I get to go back through day one again? Because
Right.
it's so memorable and so exciting, Um, then on the backside, right? Not just in the first day, but on the backside, the retirement piece, right? Like they talked
Mhm.
about having a ritual of transition, and a ritual of transition going from like one phase of life where I was doing this job into another, or maybe moving from, being an active agent to a manager or something there's kind of like that ritual of transition to help people close one chapter of their life and move on to the next. I thought that was pretty interesting. How could we take that and sort of use that, you think, as agents for creating that ritual of transition of our clients who are moving into a new house or selling a house? Because that's a major transition.
Well, and a lot of times that's, the reason why they're moving is because of a major transition in their life. It's, a marriage, having kids, a job change, or, it's the other side where it's a divorce, a separation, a death, one of those things. And so it's, you know, that was something that I was thinking about was, you know, doing something to move people forward. I know a lot of people, you know, help get their clients out and about and involved in the community. So I know one agent that does during the summer just does a popsicle truck and has for the block and has, you know, the popsicle truck there, her sign, and invites all the neighbors to come out for an hour and get a free popsicle. You know, another person there's a coffee truck that they do, and they do a morning coffee on I think a Saturday or Sunday morning, and just to, you know, from 8 to 9 invites the block to come out and meet their neighbor. And I think those are, you know, little things, but they, you know, it's an interaction and a great way for clients to, you know, it's a great marketing piece for the agents, but at the same time, what it does for that person is invaluable.
Yeah, for sure. And the part in the book on page 37 when they talk about the missed moments, right? The missed moments.
Right.
And they talk about the banking industry, you know, and the place that holds most of your finances. And do they ever, you know, recognize you or send you a gift for, you know, having all of your money tied up there? Like, I just thought it was interesting as you read this, you start thinking about the milestones, the transitions, the pits, right? Like, I think about some of the difficult times I've had in my life. And some of the things I remember most were like the people that reached out, right? So like at my mom's funeral, one of my high school football teammates showed up. You know, when you find out that like, when you have difficult things happen, like the person just doesn't even call, they just drive over to the house, be like, hey man, you doing okay? Right?
Yeah.
Like, things like that, like those pits where you're in a difficult place and somebody who you least expect shows up and doesn't even really say anything, but just shows up to provide support. Like that's a defining moment. And I think when you read the book, you start thinking in moments, which ironically is the title of chapter 2. And you start thinking in moments, and how is it that we can create these and provide these for our customers? So super excited about chapter 1 and chapter 2, where we're talking about the what are defining moments, epic, and then starting to think in moments of like transitions, milestones, and, you know, some of those pits. Any final reflections, Erin, on chapters 1 and 2 as we bring this podcast to a close?
You know, I mean, this definitely sets the basis for what's to come. And like you said, I mean, it's not a book to skip through, because it, you know, each chapter seems to be playing off the next. And this very much, it makes you start looking at, you know, different moments and ways to capitalize on them, whether it's for yourself, whether it's for someone you love, or for a client, you know, but you start thinking about like, how can I make something ordinary extraordinary? And it's all in your control.
Yeah. If you just start thinking, and if you first understand what makes a moment, and then you start thinking in moments, you definitely can make those moments of ordinary extraordinary. And thanks for giving me the title of this podcast.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, next time, Erin, we join here, we are going to be talking about chapters 3 and 4. For anybody that wants to pick us up next week, chapter 3 and 4, we're talking about elevation, building peaks, and breaking the script. Looking forward to catching you next week. Thanks for being here.